Wow. Not one of the most expansive texts of the Christian Bible, is it? Women, submit to your husbands? Not so much. And as we know from the beginning of the episode War Crimes, the First Lady isn't entirely impressed either. As she notes, I do skip over that part because it's stupid. But the president has more problems. All hacks off the stage, he shouts. Now, his actual issue isn't so much that the priest blew the interpretation of the text, which he did, by the way, but rather that his priest was a bad speaker. He had an audience and he didn't know what to do with it. Hackery, exactly. Words, when spoken out loud for the sake of performance, are music, and music has the ability to find us and move us and lift us up in ways that literal meanings can't, he says. And finally, the president gets to the message of this passage: be subject to one another. And then, of course, the show continues and the president moves on to other things. But I'm not sure I have ever really moved on from that opening scene, because I sit with my minister hat on and I long for more. I mean, I'm not entirely sure I can tell you what else happens in that episode other than Allison Janney delivering so beautifully the line, Melissa Markey died. Well, what does be subject to one another mean, I wail? I mean, come on, Jed, don't come here with half a thing and not be able to, after you've walked me to the brink and say you got to do this, it's important. And I've been waiting 17 years for an answer. And none is coming directly from Sorkin and company, so I finally decided I had to write my own answer. Now, for those not familiar with the biblical text that Liz read for us, other than its placement in the show, it comes from an epistle or letter to the church in Ephesus. And it's one of the many written in the name of Paul of Tarsus, people carrying on the ministry of someone who planted these Jesus churches around the Mediterranean. Now, Paul was like this big church planter, almost like a megachurch pastor. Only his congregations were probably small, probably smaller than this. But he has this collection of churches that he stewards, kind of like a bishop or a district executive or consultant. And, well, let's not kid ourselves. People 2,000 years ago were very much like people today. And anytime you get a bunch of people collected in any kind of organization, there's going to be conflict, especially when they're collected around a mission or a vision or a belief. So these letters, these epistles, aren't, well, to me anyway, so much sacred text as they are swift kicks in their collective keisters. Over and over again in these epistles, Paul is telling them to, A, stop bending the stories of Jesus to make you look good. B, stop bending these stories and these beliefs to make other people look bad. And really, C, stop being bad. This letter to the Ephesians is no different. My hunch is that there was a lot of conflict and infighting. So this letter is very much saying you have to get along with one another or you have no hope of changing the world. I mean, especially since the very figure they're centering their organization around, Jesus, is most assuredly not keen on people treating one another with disrespect. In other words, this isn't so much about a particular belief or connection to a particular God. It's about you and it's about me, which means it's about us. What we're talking about is seeing one another as family, as the people we devote our last measure of affection to. It's how we are seen and cared for and thought of. And this isn't just about family and dearest friends. This is about how we treat strangers, how we treat coworkers, how we treat people in the coffee shop, at the airport, at the gym, in our houses of worship. This is about how we treat one another with our policies and laws, This is about how we treat one another with our everyday interactions. Now, let me be clear, this is not about being subservient. This is not about imbalance of power, or at least it shouldn't be. Rather, it is about attention, simply being attentive to one another. We might talk about it as being kind. Now, I want to make a distinction. I do not mean nice. I hate that word, nice. Nice is wishy-washy. Nice rolls over. Nice buys into the gospel of comfort, a gospel that says we don't want to offend. Nice is complacent. Nice doesn't make waves, doesn't make a stink, and lets people have their own version of the truth, even when it isn't factual. Nice doesn't want to bother anybody. Nice says comfort is more important than goodness. Ease is more valued than doing what's right. Ugh. We are, however, supposed to be kind. Kindness sees a need and offers to help. Kindness stands up for the person being bullied and makes sure they're safe. Kindness disrupts lawlessness and incivility. Kindness goes out of its way. Kindness recycles. Kindness holds the door open. Kindness builds a ramp. Kindness explains. Kindness knows its privilege and uses it to build justice. We see this flavor of kindness throughout the West Wing. It's Charlie agreeing to be Anthony's big brother after Simon Donovan is killed. It's CJ giving Charlie a framed picture of him and his mother. It's Toby waiting for CJ after she talks to Hoynes about their one-night stand. It's Leo making space for Toby's concerns about school prayer. It's President Bartlett giving Leo the napkin. It's candidate Bartlett going to the airport to be with Josh when his dad dies. It's Josh patiently, although sometimes impatiently, explaining policies to Donna and us. It's Donna. Donna meeting with a woman who is begging for her son's clemency. Donna sitting with journalist Billy Price's wife when he goes missing in the Congo. Donna bringing Josh water and calling Dr. Keyworth during the crash after a shooting. But it's more than just acts of kindness like that, because kindness is not easy. Kindness is sometimes uncomfortable because it requires us to not stay comfortable, not always stay nice. And kindness doesn't sit still. It acts in big and small ways. It calls elected representatives and writes letters and goes to protest marches and makes sure that everyone who wants to have a voice has one. Kindness knows better than to blame the victims and believes survivors of sexual harassment, sexual abuse, and sexual assault. Kindness stands outside of Planned Parenthood and acts as protective escort to women seeking medical treatment. Kindness puts on angel's wings and shields a grieving family from a Westboro Baptist church protest. Kindness sends water to Flint, Michigan, and camps with the Indian nations at Standing Rock. Kindness prays for the protection of sacred land and water and asks forgiveness. Kindness presses legislators to send aid to Puerto Rico. Kindness mourns the loss of another black person killed by police. And kindness works for racial justice because it knows that black lives matter. Kindness mattered to an older white woman I observed who stood in line at a deli one morning just before Thanksgiving. As I approached the line, this woman asked for a grilled chicken salad that she would take for her lunch. The clerk told her it would take about 5 minutes to cook the chicken and happily began the process. As the clerk was bagging my items, a Latina woman came in and asked for a grilled chicken salad to take for lunch. "We can't do that chicken right now," the clerk said in a curt tone. And the Latina woman began to slump off And that could have been the end of it, but the older woman insisted, "You did it for me, you can do it for her." Related to the show, kindness mattered to a homeless man who found out his brother, a Vietnam vet, had died while wearing the coat of a White House staffer. And that staffer, as we know, made the uncomfortable decision to find his family and arrange a military funeral. Toby's actions were not always easy. It would have been the easier path to ignore homeless veterans, to let someone else take care of the problem, to do the bare minimum. Kindness isn't always easy. Kindness sometimes gets side-eye from the president. But kindness matters. Kindness answers yes. Kindness doesn't calculate the return on investment or the risk to reputation or the fear of comments. Kindness is present to the moment. Kindness is how we are subject to one another. Back to the Ephesians text, the writer is not just talking about affection for others, but understanding that when all is said and done, we're all a part of one family, one body. How can we be unkind to one part of our body when it's so intrinsically a part of us? As Hezekiah Walker sings, "I need you, you need me, we're all a part of God's body. Stand with me, agree with me, we're all a part of God's body. It is His will that every need be supplied. You are important to me, I need you to survive." I get weepy. But imagine when we think of another person this way and show them that they matter, that we see them as individuals with inherent worth and dignity when we listen to their stories and consider their needs. And imagine if we thought of ourselves that way and were kind to ourselves and saw ourselves with that inherent worth and dignity. This is how we become subject to one another when we live out this golden rule, all of it, as reflected across the world's religions. And it's there. Here's what they have to say. The Jewish sage Hillel said, "What is hateful to you, do not do to others. This is the whole of the law. The rest is commentary." In the Mahabharata, the divine Krishna declares, "This is the sum of duty. Do nothing unto others which would cause your pain if done to you." In the Buddhist text of the Udana the student is urged, "Hurt not others in ways that you yourself would find hurtful." In the Muslim hadith of Al-Nawawi, the Prophet Muhammad teaches, no one of you is a believer until he desires for his brother what he desires for himself. In the ancient wisdom of Shinto, there's a saying, "The heart of the person before you is a mirror. See there your own form." The Oglala Lakota spiritual leader Black Elk wrote, "All things are our relatives. What we do to everything we do to ourselves." And in the Gospel of Matthew and the Christian scriptures, Jesus says, "Whatever you wish that others would do to you, do so to them." This is what it means to be subject to one another. We are subject to one another when we stop building walls and start building bridges. We are subject to one another when we work for equal rights and equal pay and safety and clean water and accessibility for everyone, even for those we disagree with at the top of our voices. And we are subject to one another when we join our forces together, remembering what Margaret Mead taught us that President Bartlett makes Will Bailey repeat. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Be subject to one another, pleads President Bartlett and the writer of Ephesians. and every religious path worth its salt. We must notice each other's needs and seize the moment to act. We must be willing to be uncomfortable in service to something other than ourselves. We must give of ourselves out of love and affection and compassion. We can't stop to be nice and conciliatory, or the dream will never be. We must answer the call of our principles and our morals and our ethics and our faith. We must be subject to one another.